Postscriptum is a World War II tactical shooter that is often compared to Hell Let Loose, and while each game is unique and does things differently, one sees thousands of daily players consistently for the last couple of years, while the other may only see 1 to 2 full servers a day. I know people can get very divisive on which is better, but I don't really care about that. I believe having competition is always a good thing because it prevents the devs from getting complacent and lazy, and it's a thing, especially games that are very niche. An example would be Train Sim World, where they released a third game which is barely any different to the last one, and I also personally like geopolitical simulators, even though I'll be the least political person you'll know. And you've got games like Power and Revolution that's bloody expensive and releases every year, and it's literally just the same game over and over again. So what I'm trying to say is competition is always a good thing. But staying on topic, we have to address the elephant in the room, and it's a question that is possibly most associated with Postscriptum and Beyond the Wire, and that is this game dead? And from a player count perspective, no, it's not. You can get into at least one full server a day. However, if you live in the land down under like me, it's a little tough to say that it's not dead because you'll have to deal with high ping servers, and I don't care how good the game is, I'm not going to bother playing with 400 to 500 ping, but you'll also have to adjust to the European time zones a fair amount because that's where a large portion of the player base is. Thankfully, there is an effort being made to get the population going on a Friday nights in Australia. Just thought I'd give these guys a little shout out, so if you are an Aussie and you've played Postscriptum in the past, then you know, why not help them out seed? But from a development perspective, yes, the game is dead, not really to any fault of the devs since they got fired back in December, and the only new content you'll see is via modding, which is great, but it's also very disappointing that a game that I do believe should still receive continuous development is just not, and you know, that's just the way life is sometimes. But the game has unfortunately fallen into the cycle where people say it's a dead game, which puts people off from getting it, thus making the problem even worse. But Postscriptum runs on OWI core, which gives the game its squad feeling, and this is why I bring up the argument that just like Beyond the Wire, it would have been better integrated than its own standalone game. A couple of good examples include Project Reality. If Postscriptum could be switched on and off similar to how PR can go from modern day to World War II, however, Postscriptum is a paid product, so it still would have been a little bit harder to implement something like that, which is why they also could have taken the Battlefield route where you can see all of the previous games on the sidebar, and if you own them and have them installed, you can just launch them right off the menu from either game. And this also means that if Postscriptum and Beyond the Wire were visible at all times on the squad menu, this would essentially give the game free advertising because it gets more eyes on the product. I even bought Battlefield 1 because on the Battlefield 5 menu I kept seeing it on the sidebar, and I'm like, you know, why not give it a try? People do say it's possibly the last good Battlefield game that they made, even though Battlefield 5 wasn't too bad as people say it to be. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I got 2042 and I spent a long time and I couldn't get into an actual server, so I kind of just said, like, fuck this. But obviously every previous thing that I mentioned is just hindsight, and you always have 20/20 vision when it comes to hindsight. But the last negative thing I'll talk about is a couple of things that I believe to have heavily handicapped the game's success, and the first being the optimization upon release. Here's a bit of a fun fact, but I actually bought the game when it released in 2018. The person that told me about the game was actually the same person that got me into Rising Storm 2 Vietnam. But back then, I had a pretty mid-tier PC. I could play most new releases at the time on medium to high settings pretty comfortably, but I was getting 20 to 30 FPS on low to medium settings in Postscriptum, and I'm not the only person who felt this way at the time. I obviously refunded it after 5 minutes of playing, and I'm sure many other people would have done the same, which would have hurt player retention. But it wasn't just the optimization issues, there were reports of extreme bug issues coming out of early access and into full release, and people saying there's more bugs in the full release than early access, so that definitely didn't help the game. But now that we've gotten the negative aspects of the game out of the way, let's talk about more positive things of why I really like this game. And a couple of things that I I believe it does better than its competitors, for instance. Obviously, which game is better isn't the point. You can argue all you want, but it doesn't really make a difference in the grand scheme of things. The first thing that I absolutely love about Postscriptum is the atmosphere. One of the biggest contributing things is the sound design, and I believe it to be one of the best I've had the pleasure of experiencing. Everything just sounds and feels so violent. It's as if I was in a cinema watching a World War II movie at times. Some shooters suffer from poor sound design. One that sticks out to me is World War III. That's actually the least of that game's problems, but another game that I'd compliment for great sound design is Project Reality. Both of the games I've complimented in the past, and I've said that they've left me shitting myself many times, and I believe this is crucial to fully immersing yourself, crawling through a field and hearing the sounds of bullets flying over your head and the sound of artillery raining down nearby as you cower in a trench. Another thing that I believe contributes to the atmosphere is the attention to historical accuracy. Compared to Hell Let Loose, I do believe the Postscriptum devs took this into more consideration, but you might argue that a difference in the average person playing either game might not care as much that there are Panthers in Stalingrad, or the British are using the Patton 14 as the general infantry weapon and not the SMLE, but I do appreciate the lack of cosmetic customization because it makes things feel more uniform and not a jumble. But they've also limited the amount of automatic weapons people can get their hands on, which is just great for game balance because in Hell Let Loose they feel a lot more present. But the last thing about atmosphere I want to talk about is the maps, which for starters uses real historical locations. Hell Let Loose also does the same, and I'm sure if you live in the north of France or in this region here, you might have actually visited a couple of these real world locations, and I just think that's pretty cool. But another thing I'll mention about the maps in Postscriptum is that even though I was playing on a server with 30 people in it, based on the way the spawning system works and the fact that we were attacking one singular point or technically defending it, the game still felt extremely lively. But to sum up the atmosphere aspect, Postscriptum combines great sound, historical locations, authentic weapons and uniforms with squads of people communicating and working together as a team, and this leads to a really immersive World War II experience. But one idea I want to talk about is making things too realistic and how they can be a detriment to a game's health. Now, whether you like it or not, tactical shooters are a pretty niche genre, and they've actually gotten to be more popular over the last couple of years, which is great that more people get to experience and be a part of it, but it also means more casual implementation of game mechanics and gameplay experiences. Now, Postscriptum niches down even more by being more realistic than its competition like Hell Let Loose. I imagine a large portion of people just don't want to have to commit to a game like Postscriptum, whereas Hell Let Loose is much easier to get into, like not needing to use a mic, even though you should use one in Hell Let Loose, but you know, it's not as prevalent compared to Postscriptum, and you also don't need to treat your life with as much value as in Postscriptum. Seriously, in Hell Let Loose, as soon as I die, my finger presses the F key as if it's an automatic instinct because there's very little penalty to doing so. A way I compare these two games is like, imagine Hell Let Loose is like changing into tracksuit and a hoodie. It's very easy to change into, and a fair amount of people can agree that it's just comfortable all round. Whereas trying to play Postscriptum is like getting into a three-piece suit. It requires more effort and it might not be as comfortable to the majority of the people, hence why I feel like more people just prefer Hell Let Loose's more inviting and arcade-ish elements that's just more appealing to the general person. But I would like to hear your opinion on that topic because you might have a different interpretation to me. But nonetheless, I know I was a little bit of a negative Nancy in this video, but I have covered a fair amount of games on this channel and there are very few that I go back to and play with my limited time, because even though you might encounter servers that are full or with 30 players, I still have fun in Postscriptum, and you really gotta thank the community that's still dedicated to keeping this game alive. But nonetheless, I'm going to end today's video there. If you did enjoy, please do consider leaving a like, subscribing, and sharing the video with your friends. Anyways, I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace.